After my mother's funeral, my brother boldly claimed that the house and all the savings belonged to him because he was the one who took care of her. But what he did not realize was that mother had already taken steps to protect me long before she passed away, and the lawyer revealed the truth in front of everyone. I, 32 female, never expected the days following my mother's funeral to turn into a spectacle of greed, deception, and revelation. My mother had been a straightforward woman all her life, a person who believed in order, clarity, and responsibility. She had faced her illness with bravery, knowing that her time was limited, and she had made sure to arrange her affairs so that there would be no confusion after she was gone. I truly believed that the reading of her will would be a simple matter, something that would offer closure rather than conflict. I thought it would be a quiet moment of reflection and perhaps sadness, not a scene filled with arguments, false papers, and my brother's outrageous claims. The gathering took place only a couple of weeks after the funeral. Present in the room were myself, my older brother Jason, who is 35 years old, the lawyer who had worked closely with mother during her final months, and a few trusted family members who had been invited to witness the reading. Jason had spent the last 2 years living in the same house as mother, which he never failed to mention as proof of his sacrifice. He liked to present himself as the devoted son who had given up everything to care for her, often painting me as the selfish daughter who lived 2 hours away and did not share the burden. What Jason never mentioned was the reality, that I came every weekend without fail, that I helped with the bills, that I arranged her medical treatments, and that I carried the heavy responsibilities which he was neither willing nor able to handle. When the lawyer opened the file and prepared to read, Jason abruptly stood up. His chest was puffed out, his expression a mixture of pride and arrogance, and before the lawyer could speak a single word, Jason declared loudly, "Since I was the one who took care of her, the house and the savings belong to me." Mother even signed it. The audacity of his statement made the entire room freeze. And then, as though performing a cheap magic trick, he produced a wrinkled piece of paper from his pocket, waving it dramatically in the air as though it were a sacred document that could not be questioned. The paper looked as though it had been scribbled at the kitchen table, far from anything that could be considered legal, yet Jason spoke with the confidence of a man who believed his word alone could reshape reality. For a moment, my heart sank. I knew my brother well enough to understand that he was capable of pulling something like this. He had always been willing to twist the truth if it benefited him. But then I remembered something that he did not know. Mother had already anticipated this very situation. She had sat down with the lawyer months before her passing, quietly drafting a proper notarized will, one that was witnessed and signed with every legal protection in place. She had done this precisely because she understood Jason's nature. She knew he might try to manipulate, to claim what was not rightfully his, and she wanted to protect me from that inevitable storm. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression calm, and simply said, "Interesting." Inside, I was almost smiling because I knew that his little performance was about to be crushed by the truth. The room fell into a tense silence for several seconds. Jason continued to wave his crumpled paper as though it were the 10 Commandments, but the lawyer, remaining perfectly composed, cleared his throat and spoke firmly. "Mr. Jason, that document is not legally recognized. Your mother executed her final will in my office, witnessed and notarized 6 months ago. I have the original right here." At that moment, Jason's confident smirk began to falter. He tried to argue, insisting, No, she told me everything would go to me. She signed this in front of me." But the lawyer was unmoved. Calmly, he opened his folder and produced a crisp, official document, clearly bearing Mother's signature alongside 2 neutral witnesses. He began to read, his voice steady and clear. The house was to be divided equally between Jason and myself. The savings account, which turned out to be larger than either of us had imagined, was also to be split down the middle. And then came the detail that changed everything. Mother had created a separate account in my name alone, containing a substantial sum. The lawyer explained that Mother had specifically directed this to compensate me for the years of medical expenses, grocery bills, and quiet support that I had carried without complaint. Jason's expression collapsed into shock, his anger bubbling beneath the surface as he spluttered. That's not fair. I was the one who took care of her every day. She promised me. The lawyer interrupted him with utter calm, saying, Your mother anticipated you might say that. She left a personal statement alongside her will. He then unfolded a letter written in Mother's own handwriting and began to read it aloud. The first line pierced the room like a knife. Jason, living in my house and eating my food while your sister covered my bills is not caretaking. You were company, yes, but the responsibility belonged to your sister. Jason had always been the kind of brother who believed that his voice deserved to be the loudest in the room. Growing up, he constantly reminded everyone that he was the oldest, that he had more responsibility, and that because of that responsibility, he deserved more respect, more attention, and more of everything that came from our parents. I never wanted to argue too much with him when we were children, because I thought maybe that was just his personality, strong, demanding, and proud. But over the years, that pride grew into something else entirely. It turned into greed, a sense of entitlement that made him believe he should get the bigger share of anything and everything, especially when it came to our parents. On the day of the funeral, when all eyes should have been on Mom's portrait sitting quietly near the casket, Jason chose to stand up, straighten his jacket, and clear his throat loud enough for everyone to hear. The room fell silent because people naturally thought he was going to say something beautiful about our mother. Maybe share a loving memory, or thank the guests for being there to honor her. But instead, his words cut through the room like a knife. He said, The house and the savings are mine. I took care of Mom. I was the one who looked after her when she needed it most. So naturally, everything belongs to me. The shock that spread across the room was almost physical. I could see people's faces shift from sympathy to confusion. Some of our relatives looked down at the floor, embarrassed to even witness such a declaration on a day meant for grieving. My heart started to beat faster because his words felt like a punch. It was as if he had turned Mom's death into some sort of prize he believed he had earned, while completely ignoring the fact that I had been there too. I had taken her to appointments, spent nights at her bedside, and listened to her cry when the pain grew too much. But none of that mattered to Jason. At least, not in his mind. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm because I knew something that Jason did not. Months before Mom passed away, she had called me into her room one evening. She was tired, her body weak, but her eyes still carried that same sharpness and warmth I had always known. She took my hand, looked me straight in the eyes, and told me that she wanted to make sure I was protected. She said she had already changed her will. She explained that while Jason had done some things to help, his attitude had become more about control than about care. She told me she had left the house and the savings to me because she trusted that I would use them wisely and share when it was fair, not because I felt I was owed something. That night, I cried while holding her hand, trying to convince her that she did not need to worry about such things. But she smiled softly and said, I know what I am doing. One day, you'll understand why I had to make this choice. I never told Jason because Mom had asked me to keep it between us until the lawyer made everything official. She knew how he was quick to anger, quick to shout, and quick to make everything about himself. So as he stood there at the funeral, speaking boldly about what he thought belonged to him, I stayed silent. I could feel my blood burning, but I knew there was no point in fighting him with words that day. The truth would speak for itself soon enough. The lawyer had already scheduled a reading of the will for the following week, and I knew that Jason's world was about to collapse in front of everyone. The room fell into a silence, so thick that I could almost hear the beating of my own heart echoing in my chest. Jason's face turned red, his mouth opened as if he wanted to argue, but the lawyer simply raised his hand and said calmly, Your mother signed these papers herself. Her signature is witnessed and certified. Her decision was final. Everything belongs to your sister. The words landed like stones in the middle of the room, heavy and unshakable, crashing against Jason's pride and ego until he could barely stand straight. For a moment, he looked around, hoping someone would defend him, hoping that maybe our relatives would jump in and side with him, but all he met were eyes filled with disappointment. I sat there, my fingers clenched tightly together, fighting back a wave of mixed emotions. I did not feel the victory that he always expected me to crave, nor did I feel the satisfaction of watching him fail. What I felt was sadness. Sadness that even on the day we said goodbye to our mother, Jason could only think about possessions and control. I thought of how Mom used to tell me in whispers late at night, "I trust you, because you've always carried love in your heart, not greed." And in that moment, I realized that she had seen all of this coming, that she had known Jason would explode and try to claim what was never his. She had protected me in advance, leaving me the burden of responsibility, but also the gift of her trust. Jason finally slammed his hand on the table and stormed out of the room, his steps echoing down the hallway like thunder. He did not look back. He did not say goodbye. He just left in fury, swallowed by the weight of his own rage. The relatives shook their heads slowly, some whispering that they had always known he was like this, others sighing with relief that at least Mom's wishes were now protected by law. I sat still, staring at the papers in front of me, my heart heavy with both relief and pain. I had won nothing more than what Mom had always intended for me, yet somehow, it felt like I had lost my brother completely that day. When the room finally cleared, I took the documents in my hands and pressed them to my chest. It was not about the house or the savings. It was about the final lesson Mom had left me with, that love outlasts greed, and that trust can be the strongest inheritance a mother gives her child. As I walked out into the evening light, the air felt cold yet refreshing, and for the first time since her passing, I felt that Mom was still with me, guiding me, protecting me, and whispering that I had done exactly what she hoped I would do. Hold my head high, stay true to my heart, and never let greed define me. Like and subscribe for more stories of family, betrayal, and the strength to stand tall against greed.